right, guys. This is chapter 3, so we're going to talk about interpersonal communication skills. This is the first of the video lecture series. How this will work is I am going to just walk through the PowerPoint and give additional notes, pick up on some key things that the text talked about, and then ideally after you guys would watch this, you would then move on to an Applia assignment or a discussion board or both, if it is required to do so. Again, check your syllabus just to make sure that you are aware of any assignments that go along with it. So you'll see me look down sometimes because I have my notes and things I want to cover, but just here we go. Chapter 3, Interpersonal Communication Skills. When you think about interpersonal communication, you think about that conversation that you have with somebody else or a group of people. You know, you use interpersonal communication to build relationships. The book also talks about social media and how we use social media both to interact with customers as well as our employees. And then the book, or chapter I should say, finalizes with talking about business meetings and just the components of business meetings, how to have successful business meetings, and things that need to be done during and after business meetings. As we move through the slides, I'll make sure that I tell you next slide so that you can follow along. So right now I am on the first slide, or I should say the second slide, that has the 5 learning objectives for the chapter. And the 5 learning objectives are understanding the meaning and importance of nonverbal communication, listening effectively in business, making sure that you know how to do so and the components of what that means, using social media to build business relationships, using voice technology effectively in the business setting, and then planning, facilitating, and participating in business meetings. So the third slide is looking at nonverbal communication. Again, looking at the meaning and importance of nonverbal communication. Nonverbal communication, what you want to basically focus on is listening to and hearing and understanding, putting meaning to things that are not being said. Right now, I'm having verbal communication with you because I am verbally relaying messages to you, right? I am taking components from the text and relaying them to you so that ideally you would understand them. Nonverbal communication is what is not being said. So if I was just, if I felt sick and I'm just like, ugh. So chapter 3 talks about nonverbal communication, super exciting stuff, love nonverbal communication. I'm not even saying anything, and you can already tell that I'm either bored, something's up, I'm just not, you know, spunky and full of life and really excited to present this material, right? But I didn't tell you anything. You can just pick up on things like that. Likewise, when you're having a conversation with someone else, if you're talking to somebody and you're explaining something and they're looking at you like, probably telling you that they're confused about something and you need to maybe go back and explain something again, provide further clarification and such. But yeah, nonverbal communications are understanding the messages by what is not being said. It's a very, very important interpersonal skill. And when you think of just successful communication, it does go beyond what is written or what is, you know, said to another person. Moving on to the next slide, there are some components of nonverbal communication. The book talks about body movement, physical appearance, voice qualities, time, touch, and then space and territory. Our face is the most expressive part of our body, right? And more so, or more specifically, our eyes are the most expressive. You know, your eyes tell a lot when you're talking to somebody. So your body movement, you know, the gestures, you can see me using gestures in the video when you're trying to emphasize something. You're like, oh, this is so important. Gestures are also a big component of the body movement in nonverbal communication. Physical appearance, just simply make choices that flatter you or that make your message more effective. If you go into a business meeting, you don't want to look unkept, right? You don't want to look like you've just rolled out of bed and it was the last thing you did and you just kind of threw something on. You want to present yourself in a professional fashion, right? You want to, you know, you don't want to have crazy spiked out hair. You don't want to have blue hair. You don't want to have anything that's going to be loud and distracting from the message itself. Voice qualities, this talks about volume, pitch, rate, tone. You don't want to be monotone. So if I sat here the whole time and just said, there are many components of nonverbal communication. The 6 components of nonverbal communication are body movement, physical appearance. That's boring, right? And it's also very hard to listen to. So you want to make sure that you take into account certain factors that are important. So avoiding monotone. Also, you don't want to speak so quickly. So we're going to talk about chapter 3. And what we're going to talk about in chapter 3 is nonverbal communication. And in nonverbal communication, that's hard for your listener to pick up on. So making sure that your tone and just the way that you're speaking is also kept in line. For time, this is situation specific. So if you have a meeting at 2 o'clock with your manager, you're probably not going to show up from an hour-long lunch at 10 after 2 and say, okay, I'm ready for the meeting now, right? Because it's the manager. It's somebody higher up than you. You want to be respectful of time. Likewise, if you're supposed to give a presentation at noon, you want to make sure that you're ready for the presentation by like 11:30, right? You don't want to be ready for the presentation at 12:15 because that's rude, and it also says a lot about you in a negative light. Touch varies by culture. Obviously, being in the United States, we all kind of are cognizant of our own rules and what's considered okay and apropos. But when you're doing intercultural business communication, you want to make sure that you are knowledgeable of what is okay in other cultures, what is considered appropriate, what is considered, allowed by other cultures, because you want to make sure that you follow that so you're not being offensive or, shying away from your message or anything simply because you are not privy to what is considered normal or acceptable in other cultures. And then just likewise with that space and territory, we're going to talk about in a little bit, again, just those kind of different zones of space where you can see that things are considered acceptable. So moving on to the 5th slide, business communication at a distance. There are 4 different zones that the book talks about: intimate zone, casual zone, social zone, and public zone. Intimate zone, we all know what that is. It's when you're up close and you're kind of having a private conversation with somebody. That is, your intimate zone. You've heard people, it's always said like, oh, you're in my personal space. Like your personal space is kind of the same thing as your intimate zone. A casual zone, this is a conversation with close friends. You guys are all standing around. It's not really so much as intimate, but it's just kind of a step back out. This is in the 1.5 to 4 foot range, but that is where your casual zone is. Social zone is usually where most business exchanges take place. So in your social zone, that's where, you can convey business, and that's where you'll see business conversations take place. Public zone is where your least significant interactions are going to take place. This is where you are addressing a large group of audience. The book talks about 12 feet and beyond. So anything, more than 12 feet would be considered a public zone. So that covers the nonverbal section of the chapter. We are going to move on to the listening part of the chapter, which is slide 6. Listening. There is a distinct difference between listening and hearing. When you listen to something, you are putting meaning to whatever is being said. Right now, I don't know if you can hear or not, I am listening to birds. Not so much the meaning, but I am listening because that to me is telling me that something is happening. Maybe, there's more birds. Maybe there's food outside. Maybe the weather's nice enough that, the birds are out. If I'm just going about my business and I'm folding laundry and I'm, grading papers or something and I'm hearing birds, that's just, I hear birds. That's as simple as that. So hearing is the actual biological condition of you are hearing a sound. There is some sort of sound putting into place. Listening is I'm listening to the birds. I understand that there's a noise outside. It is a bird. It's probably not going to be a coyote. It's probably not going to be a dog. I'm listening to the birds. When you're driving in your car and you're just going about it, driving down 75, everything's copacetic, there's no problems. All of a sudden you start hearing a kunk, kunk, kunk sound. You hadn't heard it before, but you are now hearing it, right? You hear a sound, you're listening for it. It is now telling you something's probably wrong with your car. You probably need to have it checked out. Kind of the exact same thing. Listening is essential to understanding. You need to be able to properly listen in order to fully understand your message. On to slide 7, how listening improves business. If you think about personal experiences that you've had with just, business or just personal, but to an experience of yourself, how has listening improved the situation, right? Or likewise, can you think of a time where listening hasn't improved a situation, or where maybe you weren't listening and it ended up costing you a promotion, or you weren't listening and you got in trouble with your boss? So Listening helps improve both tasks and relationships. And it helps improve tasks by making problem solving more better. If you are listening, then you are more able to accurately solve a problem. Accuracy of communication. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like what you're saying is, so just making sure that you have an accurate and complete picture. And then you're also very understanding about new tasks. So from what I'm gathering, you'd like me to move forward by doing A, B, and C. So that is how listening can improve tasks. To improve relationships, it builds obviously interpersonal trust. If I'm talking to you and I feel like you're listening to me, then I'm probably going to continue talking to you. I'm going to continue sharing things with you because I know that you listen. I know that you understand it. It also helps employee commitment and morale. It helps with timely feedback because you're listening to something, you can provide feedback in a timely manner. And then it also just shows good customer service and loyalty. When you give feedback to an organization and say, oh, you know, I really wish you hadn't have discontinued this product. It was one of my favorite items that you had. And all of a sudden, 3 months later, that product comes back based on customer demand. You kind of feel a good sense of pride, right? Because you feel like you're one of the customers that were demanding the product to come back. It should have never been discontinued. So you're probably going to shop at that place or eat at that restaurant more because you feel like you've been listened to. There are keys to better listening. So this is slide 8. Make sure you give the speaker your undivided attention. You know, you don't want to be multitasking because as much as people think it's the most efficient and productive way to go about your day, it really isn't, because giving 20% of your time to 5 different tasks is very hard, and you're not fully comprehending everything. So making sure you give the speaker your undivided attention. Make sure you stay open-minded. Not everyone is going to say something that we agree with, correct? We're always going to I shouldn't say always, but we're probably going to find fault with things that are said to us in the course of the near future. There's probably going to be something that is said where we don't agree with it. But the key is stay open-minded. Don't just get so caught up on the one thing that you disagree with that you are completely negating everything else that comes after what the speaker says after that fact. Don't interrupt. By interrupting someone, you are basically saying that what I have to say is more important than what you're saying right now. And that is a bad business gesture. So do not interrupt. Let the speaker finish. Let them continue what it is that they're talking about. Then chime in and say, back to the point that you originally made. And then involve yourself. You know, make sure that you are giving the nonverbal cues. Are you nodding along? Are you showing signs of confusion? Are you paying attention and really just clarifying and asking questions? So making sure that you involve yourself in the conversation is an effective way to make sure that you're a better listener. And by following all of these steps, you can see that it's making your listening skills far more better. So those are the first 2 learning objectives. You guys are doing great. Hopefully you're keeping up. And again, if you have any questions or if there's anything I say throughout this lecture, make sure you send me an email and I can provide clarification at our next class, or if it's something I can email you back with, I'm more than happy to do so. So slide number 9, social media, moving on to the 3rd learning objective. We've seen an influx in how social media plays a role in business communication over the recent years, right? I mean, every company you can possibly think of has Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. There's all these different ways that social media helps you connect with organizations. It does help emphasize conversation and interaction with your customers and with the company itself. So it's actually a really beneficial tool. Looking at slide 10, listening to customers online. We're going to look at an example. I'm kind of going to go through the next set of slides rather quickly, so just follow along. When you want to listen to your customers, and we're not going to get to the example yet, but when you want to listen to your customers, you want to make sure that you actually provide an avenue for feedback. Make sure that you are giving your customers some sort of outlet where they can tell you, oh, I really wish you hadn't discontinued that item, or, oh, I'm so glad you brought that item back, or I really had good service, I'm going to continue shopping with you, or I really had negative service and I'm probably going to stop shopping with you. You want to make sure that there is some sort of avenue where your customers can vent their frustrations or share their praise with your organization. If you're going to respond, make it authentic, and also make it from somebody who is from the organization. You don't want to hire out somebody to respond on behalf of the company. And then you respond to complaints in a professional manner. If you are part of a business and you have a bad experience or someone comments to you about a bad experience, don't, shut them down and, try and belittle them and tell them, well, they just don't know what they're talking about. Handle it professionally, right? I mean, it's the business world. You want to make sure that if they have a bad experience, the only thing really that you can do is apologize on behalf of the organization, try and get them to come back, and then continue to build that relationship with the customer. You know, don't just wipe your hands off and be like, well, then forget you. Sorry, you didn't like it. On to the next. So, but try and salvage whatever you can from that relationship. So we're going to look at an example of social media and how an organization committed a social media sin, but kind of the stages of what happens when social media goes awry. So we're looking at Kenneth Cole, who is a design house. They design clothing for men and women. But you can see how quickly a social media crisis happens, but then disappears. So, taken from Advertising Age, I am now on slide 12. Top left corner, it says GAF. This happened at 10:15 in the morning. Kenneth Cole sent out a tweet to all of its followers saying, millions are in an uproar in Cairo, Egypt. Rumor has it they've heard our new spring collection is now available at line. So you can see someone responded back, unbelievable, this is utterly evil and a massive social media fail from Kenneth Cole. At the time when this was happening, there were just uprisings in Egypt. There was just massive disarray happening and just, you know, feuding on all fronts. And so Kenneth Cole decided to take that and use it as a pun to kind of talk about, because of the uproar in Egypt, the only reason that there's an uproar is because they heard about Kenneth Cole's spring collection, to which people found offense. Moving on to the next slide, talking about the outrage. This was at noon. Remember, this happened at 10:15. Kenneth Cole, they tweeted again. With respect, you were intending to, or no, someone tweeted to Kenneth Cole, excuse me. With respect, you were intending to make light of a serious situation and for money. Someone else said, wow. All I can say is wow. At 3:27, so roughly a few hours after that, there's the apology. So Kenneth Cole tweets, regarding the Egypt tweet, we weren't intending to make light of a serious situation. We understand the sensitivity of this historic moment. I have removed this morning's tweet. Please visit this link to see my apologize. And that's from Kenneth Cole. Kenneth Cole then makes a statement saying, I apologize to everyone who is offended by my insensitive tweet about the situation in Egypt. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness about serious social issues, and in hindsight, my attempt at humor regarding a nation liberating themselves against oppression was poorly timed and absolutely inappropriate. Kenneth Cole, Chairman and Chief Creative Officer. So, when you think about it, social media, yeah, you can get a lot of messages out quickly to your audience, right? You can talk about sales, you can talk about promotions, you can talk about just news, you can talk about flight cancellations, you can talk about anything quickly with social media. But you can also make mistakes, and it's how you respond to those mistakes that make your business in the future successful or failure. So again, looking at the fourth stage, parody, now at 1 o'clock. So people start taking this and just running with it, right? So people start tweeting and created a fake Twitter handle. So now instead of the @KennethCole Twitter handle, someone has invented @KennethColePR saying, people from New Orleans are flooding into Kenneth Cole stores. Unfortunate because of the Hurricane Katrina situation. Someone said, people of Australia, you have water up to your ankles during a time of high flooding. We've got your Kenneth Cole capris right here. So again, fake Twitter handle, but not, it's now just kind of people are running with it as a joke. So at 2:45 you see humor. Someone said, simply amazing. They're retweeting. This is like Christmas come early. Someone then took a picture of a Kenneth Cole store and photoshopped a tweet and put the tweet of the Egypt tweet onto the store. Kenneth Cole said, just to clarify, we did not put the inappropriate tweet in our store. It was a prank. Then indifference. So between the hours of 4 and 7:30 of that same day, people are just indifferent about it. So Scott Robin says, there is no apology needed. It was funny, and ultimately it's just Twitter. People need to lighten up. Someone else said, I didn't even see it, but now that it's generated enough whatever to cause this apology from someone whose style and creations I like and appreciate as a designer and consumer, I'll let it slide if and when I do see it, especially since compared to some of the other insane to just plain wrong I've seen from other stars and peasants. And then lastly, Alex Bashir said, people were offended? How exactly? I'm with the people protests, but to be offended? What a waste of time. Be offended by those who are against the people, by those fighting and harming the people, not by a harmless joke. Oh, and I like your watches. So you can see now it's just kind of, it's past, right? It's been like 10 hours, 9 hours, and people have moved on. But if you look at the next slide, it's a chart or a graph, and it has kind of the Twitter traffic, and you can see how it literally has spiked during those hours, and then it just dies back down and goes back to its normal levels. So you can see really what happens when social media antics do fail. Then the next slide, it looks blank, but in the top right corner you'll see just repeat. You just move on. You go back to the same old thing. Talk about what's happening in your stores, talk about any sales and promotions, learn from this lesson, but ultimately you move on. To engage your employees online. So I'm looking now at slide 20. You want to make sure that you have an intranet set up, making sure you have an intranet site so that your employees can feel like they can give feedback. They can, chime in. They can offer stories or something, but you have to have some sort of intranet site. This is new in the day of age where you have the suggestion box, the employee suggestion box. This is kind of a new wave, a technological tool that you can use for your organization. Intranets offer opportunities to engage and listen to employees. So when you think about it, when you think about customers, we talk a lot about customers in the business world. You have external customers and you have internal customers. Internal customers are your employees. They're your coworkers. They're the people in your organization. You guys are all working together, but employees are and customers too. They're just your internal customers. Your external customers are obviously the people that buy your products or the potential people that you want to buy your products. Moving on to the fourth learning objective, voice and text. Looking at how voice technology relates to face-to-face interaction, right? We're seeing a lot more with voice and text communication happening. So how does that help your organization? How does it help you as a business individual? Voice and text communication, slide 22, looking at the office phone. Book talks about many guidelines that are appropriate for using your office phone, just things to keep in mind. And I know these sound very elementary, but make sure you give like 2 to 3 rings before picking up your phone. You don't want it to be like, ring, hello, Martha Church, but you want to make sure you give it a couple rings. You don't want to seem so eager when you're answering the phone. Avoid eating when you're on the phone. I mean, this is just kind of in like your personal business as well. You don't want to sit there and take a bite of your Chipotle burrito and then, answer the phone with your mouth full of food. And then be respectful of timing. If you're someone that is an early riser and you like to get in at 5:30 a.m., by all means, I would not stop you. I'm the exact same way. The only difference is I am not going to call someone when I get in the office or return phone calls at 6:15. I don't know if someone has left me their cell phone number. I don't know if they've given me their office number. I will not dare wake somebody. So you wait, get in at whatever time you want to. Start making your calls at 8:30, 9 o'clock when the standard business day would start. Smartphone. How does a smartphone work with business meetings? Make sure it's not on during meetings. Make sure you're not using it during meetings. Make sure that if you are given a company smartphone, make sure you're following office principles when you do so and you don't abuse the situation. Text messaging, make sure that they're short. You are not trying to write a book in a text message, right? It is a quick messaging system. You also, again, don't want to use text messaging during meetings unless it is extremely important. Then you want to let the facilitator or the leader of the meeting know, I am expecting a text message during this. If I have to answer it, I will make sure I excuse myself without causing a distraction. Something as simple as that so that you are respectful of other people's time. And then voice over IP, so voice over internet protocol. This is using video chat to enhance kind of something similar to what we're doing now. This is how people can do business meetings. You can use Skype, you can use WebEx, GoToMeeting. There are a lot of tools out there that help people to make business meetings more successful. It's also a time saver and a money saver as well. So that way you're not having to fly and buy plane tickets. If you have an office with headquarters in New York City, you don't have to fly there. You might be able to just do something that's like a video conference. Schedule the calls in advance, and then also just make sure that you're aware of the technology and how it works so that it doesn't come off as not being credible. And then finally, our last learning objective for Chapter 3 is talking about business meetings. So you use meetings to manage work and build positive relationships with your coworkers, customers, or whoever it is that you're meeting with. Looking at which meeting format is best, slide number 24. Face-to-face meetings are good for any number of, or good for any person for any number of people. You can have a meeting with just your coworker, you can have a meeting with your department, you can have a meeting with your entire organization. But face-to-face meetings really help you use all 5 senses. They also help you get to know people. You can build relationships. So it's, oh, you're the person I always talk to and place my orders with. It's helpful that you put face to face, and then you just kind of build that interaction, that interpersonal communication takes place. Online meetings, these are web-based meetings using a service such as WebEx. So if this is something where you need to have a team meeting every week and you don't want to fly out every week and it's a time saver, then do a web meeting. Conference call is good if there are people in 2 or more locations. If everyone just calls in on a central number, then everyone can make sure that they chime in, and there's no video with the conference calling. And then video conferences, again, are just video-based meetings using smartphones, desktop programs, or dedicated services. How do you plan a meeting? So think about a positive meeting experience you've had. And I know when people think of business meetings, they think of like, oh, I want to pull my hair out and I just want to get this meeting over with. Or in my organization, we have pointless meetings that last all day long and they really take away a lot of my time. But when you think about a positive meeting, you know, what was done well? What steps were taken to make sure that meeting was done well? I had a job once where my job was actually a facilitator of team meetings. So creating the agenda, making sure everyone arrived on time, making sure everyone knew what their homework was after the meeting, making sure that we met our objectives for that meeting itself, making sure that we were prepared for the next meeting, setting up the next meeting. So we'll talk more about what a facilitator does, but when you plan a meeting, you want to make sure you identify your purpose. If you don't have a purpose to meet, then you probably should not be meeting. You know, don't call a meeting just to call one. Because you meet every Wednesday, but you get there every Wednesday and you guys just sit around for 10 minutes and no one has any updates, probably not the best use of your time. So with that, determine if a meeting's even necessary. Decide who should attend. If people that should be there can't come, then maybe you should reschedule the meeting. But if they obviously need to be there but they can't be, then you probably, they really don't need to be there and you're wasting their time, or 2, you need to reschedule the meeting. Prepare an agenda. So what do you want to talk about? What do you want to achieve at the meeting? If you're meeting for 2 hours, you want to make sure that you use the time wisely so that you get everything achieved in that 2-hour time frame. And then arrange logistics. Excuse me, I need water. Making sure that you have enough chairs, making sure that it's in a setting that's appropriate, making sure that if there's a meal that needs to be provided, there's a meal that's ready for people that are attending the meeting. Making sure you have a whiteboard, making sure that you have pens and pencils and notepads if people need to take notes and maybe forgot anything. So these are things that you want to think about when you're planning a meeting. So when you're facilitating a meeting, next slide, slide 26, think about how you would handle these situations. One participant tells a funny story during the meeting and everyone laughs. How's that conductive to the meeting? You know, I mean, it helps break ice. If it's within the first few minutes, then that's fine. If you're the facilitator of the meeting, you probably want to remind people, hey, we only have an hour to meet. We're still on objective number 1. Let's circle back and we will continue on with the meeting. What if you try to start the meeting, but 2 participants won't stop talking to each other? How do you do that as a facilitator? What would you do? You'd probably say to them, you know, we need to start this meeting. Again, remind them how much time that you need for the objectives. Remember how long that the meeting's going to be. And if they can't talk, if it's something that they really need to hash out, then ask them to step outside so that it doesn't delay the progress of the rest of the team. And then lastly, a participant is on his or her smartphone during the important discussion. You probably want to say something that, you know, we'd always discuss we're not going to use smartphones. Is this something that maybe you need to step outside and handle, or is it something you can put your phone down because it's distracting to the team members around you? So just making sure that you always remind people of just good business etiquette, and you want to make sure that you're respectful of time. I mean, people do go to meetings, but they also have a job that they have to do as well. So you want to be respectful of their time if they have to do something that is necessary for their own day-to-day business. So participating in meetings, slide 27. So all meetings, just all meetings in general, make sure you're on time and make sure you're prepared. Avoid side conversations. Do not bring food unless it is, if someone says, you know, it's going to be breakfast, I'm sorry we can't afford it to purchase breakfast for everyone, so bring a snack or something, then that's fine. If there's food set out when you get there by the facilitator or by whoever is hosting the meeting, then follow kind of the suit of everyone else. If everyone starts eating before they sit down, or if the food's out but we're not going to eat until maybe closer to lunchtime, then leave the food be. Support others' comments, disagree respectfully, so just good business etiquette, making sure that you are not that person in the meeting where they, you know, don't feel like they can contribute anything because you're going to shoot them down every time. If it's virtual meetings, make sure, again, you practice with the technology. Minimize background noises. So if I had construction outside, I have a patio behind me, but if I had construction outside, then I'd probably want to close the window or something. I wouldn't have the patio door open. Speak and act naturally. I'm not sitting here saying, guys, okay, we're going to talk about meetings, and it's going to be so exciting. No, that's confusing, that's distracting, and slightly obnoxious, so just talk naturally. Just talk as if people are in the room. I'm delivering this lecture as if I was standing in front of all of you. So make sure that you act naturally. Also avoid multitasking. Again, if I was sitting here doing other things, if I was doing dishes and giving this lecture, probably be hard for you to focus. That is all I have for chapter 3. So if you guys have any questions, again, about this lecture, then please let me know. Remember, we have the personal narrative preparation due, and there is also a discussion board question. So make sure that you read the article on the discussion board and then create a thread or respond to someone else's thread so that you can get credit. But it's an article that relates to interpersonal communication from the chapter. So hope you guys have a good day, and I will see you this week. And that was chapter 3. Bye.